expressed on this program are not those of intellectualradio.com, its subsidiaries, or sponsors. Encouraging, educating, and empowering you into action. This is Warriors Talk with your host, Lady ReShell.
Hello. Welcome to Warriors Talk with author and founder Lady ReShell, where we move away from awareness towards action. It is Health and Wellness Monday, and our topic for today is, are you at risk for colon cancer? We are live on Intellectual Radio. We just heard from the Drive at 5 with Roman. Keep it locked right here on Intellectual Radio and allow us to feed your brain. On the last episode of Warriors Talk, Rizal and I talked about trauma bonding. Go over to YouTube, type in Intellectual Radio, and stay connected. The quote of the day is, a man too busy to take care of his health is like a mechanic too busy to take care of his tools. We are grateful for our sponsor on today. We have Pastor Michael Richardson with the Emanuel C.O.G.I.C, who has a spiritual word for us every Sunday morning at 10:15 a.m. on Facebook. Let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Greetings, I am Pastor Michael Richardson.
And I am First Lady Anastasia Richardson from the Emanuel Church of God in Christ. We're located at 3058 West Van Buren in Chicago, Illinois. We are building upon a solid foundation.
And we're inviting you to join us every Sunday morning on Facebook Live at Emanuel C.O.G.I.C at 10:15 Central Standard Time. And you can also view our videos on our YouTube channel at Emanuel C.O.G.I.C-MR. Once again, this is Pastor Michael Richardson
and First Lady Anastasia Richardson, and we're from the Emanuel Church of God in Christ. We are building upon a solid foundation.
Here are your trending topics for today. According to CNN, confirmation hearings for President Biden's Supreme Court judge nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson, have begun. If confirmed, Jackson will fulfill Justice Stephen Breyer's up-and-coming vacancy and become the first Black woman to serve on the nation's highest court. The judge, who currently sits on D.C.'s federal appellate court, is being introduced today and will deliver an opening statement. Also, senators are making opening statements, establishing arguments, and arguments against the confirmation as well. Jackson will answer questions for lawmakers Tuesday and Wednesday, and witnesses will testify on Thursday. Democrats hope to confirm Jackson by early April. Those are your trending topics for today. Joining me today is our healthy solution expert with over 20 years experience as a family physician, and she is impacting lives every single day. Hello, Dr. Michelle.
Hello, Lady ReShell. Can you hear me?
Yes, how are you?
I'm good. Happy Monday. It's spring, and it was a beautiful day here, right?
Very beautiful. Just a little taste of what's to come.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about this topic. This topic right here is going to help save a lot of people's lives if they just only listen. So if you are joining me via any type of social media, share the show, invite someone else in on the show that would benefit from this valuable information. We're talking about, are you at risk for colon cancer? And in the United States, colorectal cancer is the third leading cause of cancer-related deaths in men and women, and the second most common cause of cancer deaths when men and women are combined. It is expected to cause about 52,580 deaths during 2022. Whew. So, Dr. Michelle, when I think about colon cancer, the person that I really can relate it to would be Chadwick Boseman, right? He died in 2020. He was diagnosed in 2016 at the age of 39. We know him from 42, Get On Up, The Black Panther, Marshall. I mean, he gave us some really good movies, right? And he was doing a lot of the movies he was doing while he was, it said he was going through surgeries, he was going through chemotherapy, and he still was able to push out, some great movies that we can, continue to watch on for years to come. but he ended up losing his life to colon cancer. Then I found out that his brother was diagnosed 2 years later than him. Now I was trying to find out, was it colon cancer or some other type of cancer? But I wasn't able to find it being specific to colon cancer. But his brother said he was in remission right now from fighting cancer. So
Yeah.
39.
Yeah, well, 39. Yeah, when we were thinking about, what to talk about this month, and I knew it was Colon Cancer Awareness Month, he was the first person that popped into my mind, and I felt like let's do it, just in honor of him, in order to save lives and give people this information, because, like you said, third leading cause of death, we can catch colon cancer early so you don't have to die from it. We want to prevent some of those 52,000 deaths that they're predicting for this year. But there's a lot of things we can learn from Chadwick's case, right? He was young, maybe some family history, right? Could it have been caught earlier with some screening and things like that? So I'm really glad that we're talking about this so that we can tell people, what are your risk factors? When should you be screened? What should you be doing from lifestyle changes to decrease your risk of developing this cancer?
Yeah, before we jump right into the meat of it, just when you were just talking, what popped into my head was I'm just thinking about Chadwick Boseman. Is why do you think there's such a shame that comes with cancer? Like some people feel like, some people make you feel that way, or you may feel that way on your own. Like is some sort of stigma or shame around having a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, I sure hope that is not the cause, because that certainly can decrease people's wanting to go and get tested, right? We tend to think, well, if I don't know, then it's not there, right? But because there are some things that we can do to prevent it. Some patients feel like, oh, I did this to myself. I don't want to tell anybody because I feel ashamed. What could I have done to prevent this, right? But we want to remove that. We want to give people the knowledge, so like you said, they can take action. And if you have any reasons that you think that you don't want to get screened, or you're don't want to tell people, we hope to remove that from this discussion today.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right into what is colorectal cancer.
Right. So we think we usually lump colon cancer and rectal cancer together. The colon is the large intestine that where we absorb salt and water from our gut, where we form stools that are then passed through the rectum and the anus and out the body. But we tend to lump them together. The risks can be very similar, but it starts with most 90% of colon cancers start with these little growths called polyps. And these polyps, these little growths in your colon, if left unchecked, can become cancerous. So and when we say cancer, right, we're talking about abnormal cells that replicate, they grow, they either invade into the rest of your colon, they invade past your colon, right? So we start to talk about stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 cancers. 1 and 2 are kind of local. Stage 3, when it gets out of your colon into the surrounding tissues. Stage 4 cancer, when it spreads to other parts of your body. But the idea is we want to catch those little polyps, those little growths before they become cancerous. And the way we do that is with the colonoscopy, which is the gold standard test.
So I heard, well, as I was doing my research, that they said that, it turns into, so the polyps start first, but it could take up to 10 years before it turns into cancer. So, and that's why they're urging you to like get in there before it even turns into cancer, because by the time you feeling these symptoms, it's probably already too late or advanced.
Yeah, most polyps grow very slowly, right? And this brings me to a patient we were discussing in at work in general. He's 53-year-old gentleman who was doing the right things. He was eating plant-based, he's active, doing the right things for his life, except he did not get his colonoscopy. And then he went because he was having some abdominal pain, some little abdominal pain, cramping, and turned out that he actually recently was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, right? Which probably could have gotten caught much earlier. And he's 53, so he should have had his colonoscopy. We said at 50, but now we've moved that up to 45. And then we wonder, right, how long had he had a polyp? Should he have been screened even earlier than that? And those are all the what ifs. It's a story that, we're talking about this today, and we were talking about this patient today, and it's just very timely, and it put it in my mind that it's important to not put it off and to be screened. And know your risks, so know when you need to be screened earlier than the recommendation, which is age 45. And because we know now, it used to be age 50, now it's age 45 because people are being diagnosed younger and younger, like Chadwick.
Absolutely. Like, I didn't know when I did mine, I didn't know about the 45 until I started doing the research. I'm like, where did this 45 come from? I always thought that it was 50. So yeah, if you think about it, if some people had went in at 45 and the polyp might have been there, they may have been able to get it out of there and not have to deal with a cancer diagnosis. So it is important to know the milestones of the different screenings that we have to do. And the screenings are there to catch before the symptoms even start. You want to be able to catch these things.
Right, because with colon cancer, you can really have no symptoms. I mean, some of the symptoms, as talking about symptoms, you can have abdominal pain. You may have some blood in the stool. You may have actually no symptoms. You may have a change in the character of your stool. Is it changed color? Is it changed consistency? Pencil thin, just any changes like that can be signs of something going on in your colon. And of course, latent disease, weight loss, appetite changes, depending on if it's spread to other organs, other changes can occur.
Wow. And if it's lasting longer than how long when we are feeling these things, like how long should we be feeling these things before we say, let me go and get this checked out?
Yeah, good question. So I always say if it's changed from your usual and you give it, I would give most things, okay, a week, it's resolved, it's getting better, right? We usually tell people in any sort of most symptoms, right? If you've got an upper respiratory symptoms, take some things over the counter. If it doesn't get better in a week, come see me, right? So same thing, if something is persistent and over those days to a week, you can't figure out what is wrong, right? Talk to your provider, call your doctor, let them know what's going on, right? Especially, something like weight loss. We always in the medical community get nervous about when someone comes in with unexplained weight loss. We go and we search and we ask questions and we want to know, did you get all your preventative things done, your screenings? Let's get some blood work, all of that, because it can certainly be a sign of something more serious.
Diarrhea, constipation, the feeling that your bowels are not all the way empty.
Right. Yes. So like we said, a change in the characteristics of your stool and right. Constipation for sure. Right. If there's a large mass in your colon, right, then the stool can't pass through. And then there's another phenomena where when the stool can't pass through very well, then just liquid will pass through, right? Some liquid will kind of seep around that and you'll notice that, or that sensation, right? There's a fullness there, which usually is more of a lower colon mass, right? There's a fullness in there. You don't feel like you've evacuated the whole way. Anything that is a change that's persistent over, days to weeks, get that checked out.
Ooh, okay. So what are some of the risk factors as it relates to colorectal cancer?
Right. So when we talk about risk factors, we think about the things we can change and those things that we really can't change, right? So there's family history. We talked about that a little bit earlier, right? We can't really change our genetics. So we want to know, really, we think about high risk is if there's what we call a first degree relative that had it. So your parents, your siblings, your children, those are the immediate family members. If they've had colon cancer, you should be screened earlier. My husband's mom had colon cancer. He was screened at 35 because when there's a family history, then you want to be screened even before age 45 at least 35 or more or younger, depending on your history. And then there's those inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, which causes a lot of inflammation and changes in the colon, which also we know increase the risk of colon cancer. And ulcerative colitis and Crohn's occur in younger population, 20s, 30s. So very important, even at that age, to get your colonoscopy if you have those risk factors. There are certain what we call familial polyposis, where they will do a colonoscopy and they will see hundreds of polyps, hundreds. And if you have that familial polyposis, you are also at increased risk, and it's familial, right? So you want to know if other folks in your family had it. But it's impossible for a specialist to biopsy 100 polyps on one visit. So they take samples, then they probably will have you come back in a year. You would have that colonoscopy much more often so they can look with the naked eye, we call it, just look, does anything look different? And then they take samples. So those are the sort of things you can't change, right? Your genetics, those diseases, those familial things that we can't change. But there's a lot of lifestyle things. Go ahead.
Before you get into the lifestyle things, what about, your ethnic background?
Yes. So African Americans tend to have the highest incidence and risks for colon cancer. There's also Ashkenazi Jewish. There's a Jewish population. They also tend to have a high risk for colon cancer. But African Americans tend to have a higher incidence, higher mortality when we're diagnosed for a number of reasons. Could be being diagnosed later, maybe not getting as extensive treatment as other races, depending on access. So we know that could be an issue in the African American population. So being Black African American does increase your incidence and of getting that colon cancer and mortality, unfortunately. So that's why we need to really do the things that we can do from a lifestyle perspective.
Awesome. So we just talked about the things that you have no control over when it comes to your risk factors for colorectal cancer. So what can we do, Dr. Michelle?
Right. So we get back to those lifestyle things that we are always talking about, right? On every show, when we talk about what can we do to affect our health, it always comes back to what we put in our mouths, right? And how active we are. So we know that people who are obese, who are not active, tend to have a higher incidence of colon cancer, along with diabetic patients too. But then, right, those things kind of run together because the same risk factors for diabetes are the same risk factors for colon cancer. And then what we put in our mouths, so high fat, low fiber foods tend to increase the risk. So if you're always, and red meat, actually, red meat. So your beef, your lamb, pork, all of those things can increase your risk of colon cancer. So we always talk, ReShell, about the right things to put in our mouths. And what does it always come back to? Fruits, vegetables, right? The same things that the plant-based diet, as much as we can, that's what we should be eating.
And it seems like what it does, it works like across the board, like you said, with diabetes, with high blood pressure, like anything that you're dealing with. If you can control your weight, if you can control your diet, I like to say lifestyle instead of diet, because diet is, to me, is a fad, but lifestyle, you're doing this forever. Like if you can control and manage those things, then you can really decrease your risk significantly of a lot of these diseases that are out here, or you'll be able to manage the disease, better if you have those things under control.
Right. Yes. I mean, we can't stress enough in the medical community the importance of those lifestyle changes in maintaining your health, preventing disease, and then preventing complications from the diseases that you have. We can always say, I can write your prescription. That's easy. But the hard part is what you have to do, which is changing that diet. And even we think when we cook our meats on really, really high temperatures, that creates certain chemicals, right? There's some people who really like to barbecue and cook their foods at a high temperature, but they think that can produce carcinogens, cancer-causing agents in the meat. So we have to be careful with that, right? So when you look at all the little things, right, it's not always just one thing. It's, I eat meats, but I'm a little overweight, and maybe I smoke, because smoking is also a risk factor, and you put it all together, and it really does increase your chances of developing disease.
Wow. So we talked about what is colorectal cancer, and we dipped into the symptoms, and we talked about your risk factors, things that you can change and things that you have no control over, right? Let's talk about, and I think this is probably one of the most important things, is that the screening.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So, of course, colonoscopy is the gold standard, but even before that, there are other options. They're not the best options, right? We really want to stress the colonoscopy, but there are tests where we can screen for blood in the stool, especially if someone comes in with anemia. Let's say someone has anemia, but they're not of the age where we would say, oh, you need a colonoscopy, right? So if you're a 30-year-old woman and you have anemia, we wouldn't first think, oh, we need to do a colonoscopy, right? We would think it could be a menstrual thing, it could be other things, but we may also just say, well, let's check your stool for blood to make sure that is not where the anemia is coming from. But of course, if it was positive for blood, then we would send you for a colonoscopy. So we think of the blood, that stool test for blood, as sort of, yes, we can do that for those people that probably are not in the category for colonoscopy screening. We wouldn't think to take a 35-year-old man, right, and say, go get a colonoscopy. We might check the blood in the stool first, and then say, okay, well, we see something here. Let's go ahead and send you for a colonoscopy. So that's one test that we can do. There's also, we hear about Cologuard, which is the at-home screening test, those stool testing kits, right? So you can give a sample, and they give you all the equipment to do that, put it back in the box, and you mail it off. And within probably 7 to 10 days, you would get a result that would say you're either high risk or low risk for colon cancer. They look for blood. They look for certain genetic markers in the stool that may signify colon cancer. So that's another test that we offer if someone really doesn't want that gold standard colonoscopy. And then you've got the sigmoidoscopy, which is really just looking at a part of the colon, that lower part of the colon, where most colon cancers develop. But actually, the gentleman we were talking about before, the patient, he developed cancer in a different part of the colon, not the sigmoid. But the sigmoid is the lowest portion of your colon that leads to your rectum, and that's where most cancers form. So they can do that test too. But again, that colonoscopy, I've had a colonoscopy. People are afraid. They think it's going to be painful. It's not. It's not. The procedure is they give you the stuff to drink, the liquid to drink, and that will clean out your colon. That's the worst part because you're going to have diarrhea and then you'll have liquid stools and it cleans out your colon. But I'll tell you, if you have to have a colonoscopy, drink all of your prep, because the last thing you want to do is drink half of it and be miserable for that half of it, and then go to get your colonoscopy and they can't do it because there's still stool in your colon. It's not clean. They can't see what they need to see. So that's the most difficult part, because you stay home for that 24 hours, watch TV, and drink your prep. The colonoscopy itself, if you've had one, it's not a problem. They give you sedation. The doctor talked to me. I was on the table. She said hello. And before I knew it, I was waking up. Okay. So, and no problems, thank goodness. So don't be afraid of that colonoscopy if your doctors talk to you about it. If you know that you may have some risk factors, the ones we talked about, right? Diabetes, obesity, smoking, alcohol, eating red meat, all those things, and you're of that age, definitely speak to your provider about it.
I feel like, hey, Tracy, thank you for tuning in. I feel like out of all the ones that you talked about, I would rather get the colonoscopy because it's going to look at the entire colon, not just part of it, but the whole thing. So it's going to give them a good picture of, if something is there. Talk about, like, if something is there, they can remove it like right then and there. So you may not have to go through like a totally different procedure, because they can remove, they could possibly remove the pollens like right then and there.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So if you have a colonoscopy and it's completely clean, no polyps, then they'll see you in another 10 years. They'll say you did great. We'll see you in 10 years unless things change. If they see polyps, then they remove those. They snip them off. They biopsy them. They remove them. And then depending on when they send it to the lab, they look at it and make sure there's no precancerous or cancerous cells. If you have polyps, you have to go back at least 3 to 5 years, depending on the stage of those polyps, how they looked. Your provider will talk to you about how soon you have to return. So if you have polyps, you will be going back more often than every 10 years. But if it's completely clean, and you get it at 45, then they'll see you back at 55 unless things change, right? Stool, anemia, anything different, you can go and get your colonoscopy again if needed. But you're right. It's kind of like that mammogram. It's not, you don't want to go, it's a little discomfort, but once you go, right, we can deal with the results one way or another, right? Relief that this time it was negative, or at least we catch it early. That is what all this prevention is about. We want to catch things before it becomes serious. We want to catch it as early as possible. Same thing when we talk about breast cancer, right? We want to catch that in stage 0 or stage 1. I mean, right when we start to see the change. Remove it, no other chemo or radiation may be needed, none of that. That's the success with these screening tests.
Right. So the only way to really do that is you have to be your own health advocate, which means you have to know your body so you can know when something is not right. And then, if you are fearful, go in fear and get it done, like Doc said, so you can have that peace of mind. And to be uncomfortable for a couple of minutes, for the test, and then to have a peace of mind for, okay, I got to go back for 10 years. And like when I did it, I really didn't want to do it. I was like, oh, I didn't want to do it. But knowing my history, I had cancer already. So I was like, I need to just go and just get it over with. I preach action all the time. So, what does it look like if I'm not taking the action myself? So I did it in fear, and I went and, I got it done. And really the prep is just the crazy thing. So, I had to do the Gatorade with the powder. And it didn't taste bad. The thing of it is, it didn't taste bad. It wasn't like a bad taste, right? It was just, you being inconvenienced running to the bathroom, to clean yourself out. But it's so funny. After I was done, like all the way out, I was talking to the people like you were, all the way on the table talking. And then when I woke up, my clothes were on. And I'm like, who put my clothes on? Because I don't remember putting my clothes on because I was out of it. So, and I just remember waking up and the lady was like, you want something to drink? And I'm looking like, did you put my clothes on? Like, who did it? So, and I was really out of it. My mom had came to get me and she was making stops along the way. I'm still in and out, right? So she just left me in the car as she's running errands. And I'm just like in and out of it. So I could see why they don't want you coming by yourself or taking an Uber, when you're getting the procedure done, is because you need somebody you trust that's going to get you home safely. So I would just say, do it in fear. I was talking to somebody yesterday that said she hasn't had a mammogram and I think she's 55 and she hasn't had a mammogram in 3 years and she hasn't done the colonoscopy. And I'm like, just what are you waiting on? And she was talking about that fear factor. And I was like, you would rather have that peace of mind. And I was trying to tell her, like, it's not really it's scary because people have these horror stories about mammogram. They have these horror stories about getting a colonoscopy, but you don't know what's going on because you're out of it when it's happening. You don't know. It's just the fear of the unknown because you've never been through the process before. But when you try to weigh it like, not to get it and not know, and then next thing you know, these symptoms are hitting me. Now you really don't have a choice because your body is breaking down. Either they're gonna wheel you in there or whatever, or the coroner's gonna come get you from your house. So however you want to do it.
Right.
Or you can take control and take action and just go and get it done. Maybe they find something, maybe they won't. They may remove something. They can monitor you, like Doc said, and have you come back. But to just be ignorant and not know and say, I don't want to know what they're going to tell me, like, that part I don't understand. I don't understand.
It's okay to feel uneasy and have some fear about it, right? Because you think, and as a doctor, I'm nervous when I go for my mammogram, when I go for my, the colonoscopy. You're like, okay, I know I have to do it. Hopefully, God willing, they will be fine. And it's okay to have that fear, but we've got to confront that and know that, first of all, the test is not, painful, as we said. And if you're hearing that from family members, they may have had a different experience. Sometimes they may have had it years ago, where they weren't giving the kind of sedation that they do today. Same thing with mammograms. Mammogram machines are so much better that it's not as painful as it was in, years and years ago. So find out from your provider, have a conversation with your doctor about your concern, about why you won't get it done. So they can answer your questions, right? And hopefully alleviate your fears so you will go and get it, right? A lot of times we get our information from not the doctor, we get it from Google, we get it from all sorts of places. But hopefully you have a good relationship with your provider that you can ask questions about those things, because, we are here to help keep people healthy, give you your wellness so you can live long, productive lives. And we can see in our communities how these diseases can affect not only you individually, but your whole family, right? And what it does to them. And the goal is we don't want you to get cancer. We don't want you to get stage 4 cancer. Okay. And if you do, we want you to catch it early, and we want to give you the best possible treatment for survival. So if you're listening and you are due for your colonoscopy or mammogram, any of those preventative screening tests, please take action and go and get it done. As I said, I always tell patients, I said, denial cures nothing. Okay. So just living in denial is not going to stop disease from visiting your door, but we've got to take action.
I like that. I heard somebody say once, don't deny, but verify. So go
Yes.
verify it and then figure out what actions you need to take after that, right? When you get over that hump, the fear of doing it, then it becomes easier because then you know what to really expect when you go back. So
Yes. Yes.
Experience it for yourself. Don't allow anybody else to scare you, into not taking care of your health. Basically, that's what it is.
Right. Yep. And from what we talked about, think about the things that are in your life that you can change. Right. We went down a list of lifestyle changes, lifestyle things that put you at risk, and the things that you can do. Right. If you're not active, start walking. Spring is here. Spring has sprung. Okay. So start your exercise program. If you didn't in January, get moving, because all of that decreases your risk for lots of diseases. But we're talking about colon cancer today. Look at your BMI. Are you obese, right? If you're obese, which is a BMI over 30, then we want to make sure that we talk to you about how do you change that through starting an exercise program, through the proper eating, seeing a nutritionist, all of that. So I love this program because it's about taking action. This is great. We can talk for an hour, but we want you to do something with the information.
Awesome. So we're going to give you some actionable items for you to do before the show is over with, so that you can take charge of your health. So we're talking about screening. What are the different screenings that you can do as it relates to your colorectal health? And Dr. Michelle mentioned it, having that conversation with your doctor. If you know that you have a family history of it, then you should be getting screened earlier than that person. I always say 10 years earlier when that person was diagnosed. I know for breast cancer, I say 10 years earlier.
That is true.
When the person was diagnosed, that conversation needs to be had with your doctor so they can put a plan in place and kind of partner with you and say, okay, it's time to get this test done or that test done, because life happens and you may not remember. But if you never mention it to your doctor, or if you keep it from your doctor and not being honest about really what's going on, so they can get the whole picture and be able to, give you some good information on what to do and how to make these lifestyle changes. So 45 is the age when it comes to when you should get screened. I know 50 is still stuck in my head, but it's 45, right? Because we know younger people are being diagnosed, the rates for younger people have increased. So the age has dropped to 45 instead of 50. So,
right. And that's for folks who have no other risks, right? Or no other issues, right? But if anything, any of those risk factors are in your family, in your history, you may want to get screened earlier than 45.
Kenya says, I think they need to start doing mammograms at the age of 25 when it runs in our family.
Yeah. So again, with a family history of we're talking about breast cancer, right? We would want to know, is there a gene, right? They would check for the BRCA gene. Do you have that gene? Do we need to screen you sooner than the normal 40? And certainly if you have a mom, a sister with breast cancer, your provider should be talking to you about screening earlier than the normal age.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about, my favorite part is talking about the myths, the facts and the myths when it comes to colorectal cancer, because we know that there are some out there, and those myths are part of my keeping individuals from going in and getting tested. This is one of them. So myth number 1, colorectal cancer is fatal.
Absolutely not. Actually, many people can live and survive with colon cancer, for one thing, right? Depends on how early it's caught, depends on, there's so many great treatments from surgical, chemo, radiation, and all those for the later stages of colon cancer. But people can live a long time with colon cancer. I think, in fact, right now there's over maybe 1.5 million survivors of colon cancer in the U.S. And so we know that if you catch it earlier, your survivability is much better than when you get to that, stage where it has spread outside of the colon, and you need chemo and radiation and surgery. But no.
I heard that they was working on this, a vaccine for colon cancer. It's in the clinical trials right now, to where they have this liquid biopsy where it goes into your system and it kind of reads the blood to pick up on if there's going to be a recurrence or not. There's something in the blood where they can see if it's going to be a recurrence or not. And the vaccine that they're working on is supposed to block it from coming back or something like that. So they're working on it, and I don't know how far they've gotten with it right now, but it's promising for people who may be dealing with it now or have passed from it, and it's running. It runs in your family.
Right. If they can, I love the researchers are doing such great work, right? If you can detect in the blood certain tumor markers or certain pieces of the gene or DNA that signify cancer, then you can use that to create vaccines for that cancer, which is really sort of unheard of in the world of cancer. So that is great. And I hope that comes out sooner than later.
Exactly. So, and for that myth, the reality says, and you pretty much covered it, colorectal cancer may be curable when it's detected early. Over 90% of patients with localized colorectal cancer, which is confined in the colon or the rectum, are alive 5 years after diagnosis.
Yes, because surgeons can, if it's localized to the colon, they remove that part of the colon and they check to make sure the edges of what they remove are cancer-free. And then they put your colon back together, and you can, again, live a long, healthy life. So again, we want to catch it early. If you are of the stage where you should be screened, go and get your screening.
Yes. So myth number 2, screening is only necessary for those individuals who have symptoms.
Right, and we know that to not be true because many people with colon cancer have no symptoms, right? This gentleman who I keep going back to him, right? By the time he had symptoms and this abdominal pain, and they diagnosed it was stage 4. So obviously there was a period of time where he had no symptoms, didn't have the colonoscopy, and is in where we are today. But absolutely, screening is for everyone, every male and female over age 45 or earlier, depending on risk factors.
All right. Reality says, since early colorectal cancer usually have no symptoms, which is what Doc said, it is important to obtain recommended screenings to detect these cancers. Screening is checking for cancers in a person with no symptoms.
Right.
All right. So we are on myth number 3, and it says colonoscopy is a difficult procedure to undergo.
Right. Not at all. We both have had experience with that. Very simple procedure. The prep is what people, don't want to do. But again, the prep is simple too. You drink some of this liquid, stay home, stay close to the bathroom, be done. The procedure is simple, and then you can have peace of mind, or we can find it early and deal with it.
Yes. So the reality of that is the colonoscopy procedure is not painful. Sedation is usually used during the procedure to minimize any discomfort. And Dr. Michelle talked about this, that the prep itself the day before is unpleasant, but it is part of the procedure, but it's extremely important because an inadequate preparation can lead to a misfinding in polyps. So you make sure if they say to drink the whole gallon, guzzle it
Drink the
down.
whole gallon.
And you're
'Cause I'll
not
tell
drinking
you,
it all at once, though. You know,
no, you're not.
yeah.
They tell you exactly how to drink it. And I'll tell you, even for me, I was down to almost the end. I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot do it. But I did it because I said I went through the last 20 hours of drinking it. I'm going to finish it. And thank goodness it's like, please be a good prep. Okay. And it was. So just get through that unpleasant one day and be done. And I was so glad that I did it. And now peace of mind.
Yes. All right. So myth number 4, having a colon or rectal polyp means I have cancer and need surgery.
Nope, not at all, right? So we said the polyps can be precancerous. Many people have polyps and never develop cancer from them. But they either try to remove, depending on the size, they can remove the whole polyp during a colonoscopy, right? If it's very large, they try to take at least a biopsy of it to see if it's cancer or not. But not all polyps mean colon cancer. It just means that you would probably need a colonoscopy more often than every 10 years.
All right. So the reality of that is a polyp may be a precancerous lesion that, if left untreated, can progress to the colon cancer. If these polyps are detected early and removed before they can progress, colon cancer can be prevented.
Yes, right.
So it is true that if cancer is found within the polyp, you may need surgery to remove it. Dr. Michelle said that, to remove that part of the colon. I always hear this, colon cancer is preventable, treatable, and curable.
Yes, all of that. Yes.
We just have to do our part. We have to take action and get in there. So if something is there, they can find it early.
Right. Yes, because there's many cancers we can't say all 3 of those things, right?
No, absolutely
right.
not.
Right. Yes, but it's
Is this the only one?
preventable because
This may be the only one. I don't know.
Maybe I'll have to think on that. There's
Other
a lot
than
of cancers,
like the
unfortunately.
HPV, we know the
Right.
HPV has the vaccine, so.
Right.
But
yes.
you're right. You can't.
It's not, no, you can't say that. If you find a polyp, that is really removing it before it becomes cancerous. That's prevention, right? And then all the lifestyle things. But if you have a polyp and they take it out and they say, oh, there was no cancer in that polyp, you just prevented yourself from getting cancer, right?
Yes. Wouldn't you like to get a polyp in the breast versus them saying you have breast cancer? It's a polyp there. So we're going to remove it and we need you to come back in 2 years. Like, you're right. All cancers are not like this. So, colon cancer is really different to where it can be prevented when you go in there and get the necessary screenings for them to do what they have to do if they need to remove anything. Kenya said, thanks, Dr. Michelle. This is some very good information. Dr. Michelle always come with the thunder when it comes to giving us information about our health, how we can stay healthy, how we can eat healthy, how we can take action with doing our part, going to the doctor, digging into our family histories, and just, shedding that fear and doing it anyway. Because you only get this one body. When this body breaks down, you can build it up, but it's going to take a minute.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And you said that family history piece, right? Because sometimes we tend to not talk about our family history. And you mentioned maybe stigma. People don't want to talk about that they have cancer, right? So we made sure that with this patient that he goes back, right, and talk to your siblings and to be sure that they are aware of their risk and if they hadn't had a colonoscopy now, because he may have siblings that are not quite 45 and they may think, oh, I'll wait. But no, now we know that they should be getting their colonoscopy before age 45 because of his issue.
Hello, Kent.
Hello.
Please join us. Okay, so are you at risk for colon cancer? I don't know about y'all, but I got a lot of information out of this because I felt like this is one cancer that you really can control by going to get the screening. Like you have that control If I go get this screening, I'm taking control of having them to remove a polyp if it is a polyp, or going back to the necessary screening, whether it's 10 years, whether it's 3 years, whether it's 5 years, to have that control in your hands to where you can do something to prevent it. Because like Dr. Michelle said, there are so many cancers out here that we can't do anything about. They're not talking about prevention. No, they're not talking about that. It's just like, okay, when you get it, we're gonna work with treating you on it and what we need to do. But this one is actually saying, colon cancer is saying, you can prevent this cancer by getting the necessary screenings when you should, which is age 45, or unless you have a family history, you should be getting in there early. Talk to your doctor to see when you're supposed to get in there early to get it done. Remember, it is preventable, it's treatable, and it's curable. Dr. Michelle, give us some words of wisdom when it comes to, are you at risk for colon cancer?
Yes. So as we talk about knowing your risk, we talked about family history, then we talk about those lifestyle things, right? So we tend to take those for granted and continue our habits as we have been our whole lives, because it is hard to make changes. It is hard to make changes. But if you are listening and you know that some of those lifestyle changes, lifestyle risks that you have, I want you to think about making a change today related to that, right? So at least that piece. And then, of course, if you are of age, we want you to take this information. We want you to get on the phone with your provider tomorrow and tell them you need a referral to get your colonoscopy done, right? We do these shows, not just, like you said, just to talk, but to make an impact, right? So if you're listening and you know that you've been putting it off, we want you to take action tomorrow and make that phone call.
Love it. Get it done. Thank you so much, Dr. Michelle. I appreciate you. And just for your wisdom, for your passion that you have to educate the people about their health. It's very impactful. So I just want you to know that I appreciate you.
Thank you. And I appreciate being on the show. I always look forward to it because, like you said, this is my passion. I can write a script all day, but the goal is to prevent disease and keep you well.
Awesome. We're going to close out with my sponsor, Allstate, with Paula Kelly, who's catering to all of your insurance needs from home, life, and auto. She's located at 327 East Glenwood Lansing Road in Glenwood, Illinois. She could be reached at 708-758-3300. Make sure you tell her that Warriors Talk sent you. Join me next Monday at 6 p.m. right here on Intellectual Radio. I will leave you with these words of wisdom. Every time you eat or drink, you are either feeding a disease or fighting a disease. As always, thank you for tuning in to Warriors Talk with author and founder Lady ReShell, where we are changing lives one warrior at a time.
Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell. To find out more about Warriors Talk, follow at Warriors Talk, the number 1, on all social media outlets, and Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell on YouTube. Please join us next week and every Monday evening at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on intellectualradio.com for Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell, where we encourage, educate, and empower you into action.